Hello, everyone, and many thanks for your attention for joining this stream. Today is 29th of September. Now it's 10 o'clock in the evening, Moscow time. And as always, I have prepared quite a number of news for the second news update today on some major developments. And hopefully, you will find the update informative and useful. And if so, dear friends, let me ask, as I always do, to like the video and leave some commentary. This might help to deal with the extremely aggressive algorithm, so that video will reach wider audience. As always, after news segment, I will join community chat for a little while. And if you want to highlight certain question or topic, please use capital letters, or you can use a super chat feature on my Rumble channel. As you know, I'm streaming simultaneously on YouTube and Rumble, so you can use super chat feature on Rumble, or rant as it called there. And so yes, that's it for intro. I already mentioned that this is second update. First one did not really gain much attention of the community. Maybe algorithm did not most likely algorithm did not send a notification to community, but it's up there. By the way, first news update. If you will have a time, please check that video, because I'm not going to be able to repeat all the news that I talked about in that update. That's been said, let's start today's news segment. And of course, first of all, even though we have sort of a breaking news in regards to Middle East, dear friends, in regards to Palestine and Israel, I will start with some other news, and I will get to information that is coming these minutes from White House about Trump's take on resolution of that conflict there. Although I think it's a deception operation on part of White House, so therefore I will start with the news that I have pre-planned, and I will get to the White House at some point. First of all, I want to start with Moldova, dear friends, where there was a so-called elections yesterday, and I'm using this terminology so-called because it was anything but election. In today's first update, I did share my take. Why is that? So I would not repeat the same stuff. I will just give you some stats about results. So Western-controlled regime, basically, of Maya Sandu maintains majority as a result of this so-called elections. It will have more than 55 or about 55 seats from 101 in a parliament. Opposition bloc, main opposition bloc, will have 26 seats. So no changes in the government and in a leading political power in Moldova. Globalist control regimes in Europe did manage to maintain their grip over this former Soviet republic. I think this is a very bad news for Moldova, for people of Moldova, first of all, because society is clearly split there, and this enforced regime basically on the people, and it is enforced because yet again hundreds of thousands of citizens of Moldova did not have the opportunity to vote due to criminal actions of the Sandu regime. And so this enforced regime will only accelerate inevitable disintegration, full-scale disintegration of this former Soviet republic. Probably you are wondering, what is the Moscow's position? Will Moscow recognize these results of so-called elections or not? We don't really have a decisive answer on that yet, but what we do have is that this report, for example, from TASS, that Matvienko, Speaker of the Federation Council, Valentina Matvienko, stated that Sandu was branded ultimately illegitimate as a result of this election. So Moldovan President Maya Sandu led her party to 50% of the votes in the parliamentary elections. Federation Council Speaker Valentina Matvienko stated it's clear that Sandu, who barely managed to bring her party to 50% using by notes, not even a Euro dictatorship, but an undisguised Brussels Euro tyranny, has in fact been branded with the ultimate illegitimacy in these elections. Indelible, she wrote on her Telegram channel. So this is, of course, not foreign ministry, not the Russian president saying this yet, but nevertheless, Speaker of the Federation Council is a high-ranking official, obviously, and she is branding Sandu's regime illegitimate, which I think means something, can be seen as an indicator how Moscow will react on these results. And also we have statement from press spokesman of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, about the so-called elections. I can give you a quote here. Moscow notes that hundreds of thousands of Moldavians were deprived of their opportunity to vote on the territory of Russia, which is true, by the way. I said in my first update today that more than 300,000 citizens of Moldova are living here in Russia, and the Moldovan authorities, this criminal regime of Sandu, only opened two polling stations, both in Moscow, and only sent 10,000 ballots. There is a 300,000 plus citizens of Moldova in Russia, and their Chisinau or Chinsau, as they call it, only sent 10,000 ballots. So you tell me how this freak show can be called their free and fair elections. It just cannot, right? The assessment of these elections can be made later when they are evaluated by the political forces of Moldova itself, first of all, Peskov stated. And well, my hope is that Moldavian political opposition will refuse to acknowledge legitimacy, to give any legitimacy to this so-called elections. And my hope is that Moscow will also do the same, because clearly it was not legit elections, by the way. It was anything but, right? To continue with some other news, dear friends, Vzгляд newspaper is reporting that Russian armed forces liberated Shandrigolovo settlement in the northern parts of DPR, and also Russian armed forces liberated Zarechная settlement, also northern part of DPR. I can show you on the map, dear friends, where these settlements are located. It's a regular stuff, isn't it? Almost on daily basis, I'm sharing video reports of Russian Defense Ministry and other sources about progress of the Russian armed forces on the ground, and about liberation of more and more settlements. So let me give you update. So this is, of course, map you are familiar with, and this is Zarechная settlement, quite a big settlement, dear friends, as you can see on your map, quite a big settlement on the northern side from Seversk, and this is Shandrigolovo settlement, also relatively large village, also on the northern side of Seversk Liman front line. And one might assume that with this successful local-scale offensive operations, Russian troops are further improving their ground for potential offensive in direction of Liman, in direction of Yampol, in direction of Seversk itself. And I shared my take on this sector of the front line. I think before end of this autumn, all these three settlements will be under Russian control, will be fully liberated. Also, dear friends, let me share with you this report that governor of Kherson region shared their information with the public, Vladimir Saldo, that there was yet another attempt of Kiev regime's forces to cross the Dnieper River and establish their presence on the left bank of the Dnieper River, but Russian troops were monitoring the situation, and as a result of countermeasures, this offensive group of forces of the Kiev regime was completely destroyed. I can give you some video of that, shorter video, dear friends. Some images of destruction of this landing force. I believe I have a video of that. Yes, I do. So So some fast boats were used by Kyiv regime's forces, and well, Russian military struck these boats. Some were destroyed on the Dnieper River, others were destroyed on embankments. So yet another suicidal operation of the Kyiv regime's forces initiative, not just in Kherson direction, in Kherson sector, but all along the front line, is in Russian hands, and I don't think there is any chances that Kyiv regime and its NATO backers will regain initiative in any direction whatsoever. That's being said, dear friends, let's continue with some other news, and next one is this report. Unfortunately, as a result of constant strikes on Russian refineries, especially in the southern parts of the Russian Federation, that are orchestrated by NATO, first of all, by British intelligence and their militaries and their proxy Kyiv regime, of course. We have this report today from Kommersant newspaper that gasoline sales have been restricted in Crimea. For example, I can give you some details on that. Crimea has established a fuel price cap and introduced a limit on the number of gasoline units sold per customer. According to regional government, Sergei Aksyonov, the restrictions will remain in effect for the next month. We have quote here, starting today, a fuel sales limit of no more than 30 liters per purchase is being introduced. I ask Crimeans not to stockpile gasoline and to refuel their vehicles as usual. Aksyonov wrote on his Telegram channel, according to head of the Republic, the current addresses of the gas stations with available fuel will be published daily on the website of the Ministry of Fuel and Energy of the Republic of Crimea. Sergei Aksyonov also reported that Crimean authorities have reached an agreement with the major oil traders on the fixed fuel price for the next 30 days. So unfortunately, and you can see, dear friends, here some numbers, how diesel costs. Diesel, for example, 1 liter is 75 rubles, less than $1. AI 92 gasoline 70 rubles, AI 95 76 rubles, AI 95 premium 80 rubles, and this is probably highest prices on the market right now, because far you go towards the east, here in Russia prices are less and less, but in European parts this is average prices. So yes, unfortunately, due to constant strikes on Russian refineries, especially in the European part of the country, there is some measures now in place to make sure that there are no shortages, right? In any ways, if terrorist regime in London, if British aristocracy and their criminal puppet regime under leadership of Starmer are hoping that while creating some issues with gasoline, they might provoke some freaking regime change in Russia or something like that. They are so far from reality. They're not going to achieve nothing. Absolutely. They have no idea who Russian people are. They just have no freaking idea about it. But nevertheless, well, if they think they can commit these terrorist attacks against Russia, crimes against Russian people with impunity, they are mistaken, and very soon they will realize that. I'm quite sure about it. It's only a matter of time, and UK will pay their price for all the crimes that UK committed against Russia and all the other hostile countries, by the way, from NATO. This is definitely a promise that will be fulfilled. I have no doubts about it. And people of Britain and people of other hostile countries from the NATO should know that it was not Russia that started this, but Russia will finish it. That's how it's going to be. RT is reporting, meanwhile, that, well, I mentioned in this morning's update that Vice President of US, J.D. Vance, basically indirectly confirmed that Washington is in talks to transfer Tomahawk missiles allegedly first to European NATO member states with the intention to those missiles being then delivered on the Kiev controlled territory. Of course, Kiev regime is in no position, or its forces, to use Tomahawk missiles, by the way, as they are in no position to use, for example, British Storm Shadow cruise missiles or French Scalp EG cruise missiles. All these long-range weapon systems are prepared for launches and launched by NATO military personnel from countries that are deploying these weapon systems against Russia. And of course, Tomahawk systems not going to be any different. And yet again, US citizens should know when US militaries will begin suffering crazy losses whenever they will be engaged in some confrontation somewhere on this planet. They should know that, well, if anyone to be blamed for that, it's their leadership. Currently, it's Trump and his administration that basically destining their militaries to the certain death, either in Latin America or elsewhere. Because if they think that they can mess around Russia with impunity, yet again, they are wrong. And they will find out soon. That's right. And Kat Kellogg, representative of Trump, special envoy, already made it clear that Trump has authorized long-range strikes deep into Russian territory. And dear friends, we know from previous experience that whenever Western criminals, so-called elites, are talking about transfer of second weapon systems against Russia, or deployment of certain weapon systems against Russia, those weapons usually are already on the Kiev-controlled territory, right? So when they talk about Taurus missiles, when they talk about some other long-range weapon systems, including U.S.-made ATACMS and Tomahawks, it is highly probable that those weapon systems already being deployed. And I remind you, dear friends, that some time ago, about months ago, Germany formally asked U.S. for transfer of Typhoon launchers, and Typhoon launchers are used specifically to launch Tomahawk missiles. And I would not be surprised at all if U.S. already deployed on the Kiev-controlled territory, U.S. and other NATO member states, not just those Typhoon launchers, but Tomahawk missiles too. And unfortunately, as time goes by, we are getting closer and closer to the point when West will launch unprecedented scale of offensive on Russia. I have spoken about this many times before. I call it next phase of escalation, with possible attempt of decapitation strike on Russia, simultaneous large-scale terrorist attack on Russian Federation with the assets that NATO has in Russian territory, simultaneous large-scale, unprecedented scale drone and missile attacks, and unprecedented scale cyber attacks on Russian Federation. After this attack, which seems absolutely inevitable at this point, I think Moscow will retaliate, not just on Kiev-controlled territory, but on military assets of the NATO member states that will be directly engaged in this offensive. And shortly after, globalists, neocons, and all the other enemies of Russia will have no option but to capitulate. That's how it's going to be. Either they will capitulate or world will end. That's how it's going to be. And yet again, if anyone to blame, it's a Western elites, by the way. And that's how it is. Western societies, if they wanted to live in peace, they should do something about it, right? But the majority of Western societies are quite happy when their governments are sending weapons to kill Russians. So, well, they will pay price for that now, right? It seems absolutely inevitable. And I'm not saying that Russia will target civilians, but when Russia takes actions against hostile countries, well, eventually, through some economical stuff, through some financial stuff or otherwise, but societies in the West will also feel that, right? Also, seems like many people here in Russia that were more optimistic about Trump and his administration are kind of changing the tune. One of their such personalities was the aide of Russian President Kirill Dmitriev, who stated while commenting on current developments, clear escalatory steps that US or other NATO members are taking against Russia. He commented that relentless disinformation campaigns by the deep state, globalists, and the EU, UK warmongers risk driving disastrous decisions that could dramatically heighten the threats of a global conflict. Understanding the Russian perspective is critical for global security and stability, he said. And this is true, of course, what he's saying. But I shared this comment of his in first update today and doing the same now because this comment from Dmitriev, who was quite optimistic just like a couple of weeks ago even, right? He was quite optimistic and polite towards Trump's administration. I guess he was hoping that maybe through diplomatic means, through negotiations, Moscow will persuade American counterparts that there is nothing for them in this proxy war against Russia and they should pull out US from this conflict. But it is becoming more and more clear that Trump is not about de-escalation. Trump's administration is not about de-escalation. It's exactly the opposite. Trump clearly become a Biden 2.0, even worse in some sense, because after all, Trump was promising very different to its electorate, right? Biden never did it. Well, Trump was promising that he will pull out US from these forever wars, but he's clearly lied. And I guess this statement of Dmitry indicates, at least indirectly, that there is a significant change in attitude in Russian leadership towards the current administration in US. And on very same matter, dear friends, Lukashenko, president of Belarus, made a statement straight after conversation with the Russian president, and he basically issued a sort of a warning shots towards the Trump, while saying that he hopes Trump won't make combinations with the weapons. So Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko hopes that US President Donald Trump will not build combinations of selling American weapons to European countries and supplying them to Ukraine. Unfortunately, that's exactly what Trump is doing, but I can give you some quotes from Lukashenko's statement. I'd like to see more kind of shim. I'd like to see some kind of shim not played out, like I'll give their weapons, sell them to Europeans, and let them supply Ukraine with whatever they want. Look, we are adults, Lukashenko is saying. I give them to the Europeans, and the Europeans paid, or maybe they did not pay, but just like Biden gave weapons before, they went to Ukraine. Are you going to check who paid whom and what? Lukashenko is asking. It's just a rehash of the same old story, just with a different arrangement. Otherwise, it's all the same old story Lukashenko told reporters in the Kremlin after talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday. And I think Lukashenko is indirectly is demonstrating their attitude of Moscow too. Russian president still maintains pause. He's not commenting neither on the Trump or any decisions of the Trump's administration, any hostile decisions of Trump's administration that we are observing for the last couple of weeks now, extremely aggressive steps. But I think Lukashenko did made it clear that, of course, Kremlin is paying attention and their attitude here in Kremlin is changing, I think. That's what was demonstrated by Lukashenko's statement. That was demonstrated by Kirill Dmitriev's statement. And dear friends, it's not just them. I said many times before, I guess very many people in US itself, supporters of or former supporters of the Trump are extremely disappointed to see what's going on in the White House, what is going on in Washington, because yet again, Trump was promising very different stuff during the election campaign. And let's remember what was he saying, by the way, for example, about long-range strikes deep into Russian territory. I can give you some short video on that.
only one that does.
Here he is moments ago talking about a decision that allowed Ukraine to fire U.S.-made long-range missiles into Russia.
I don't think they should have allowed missiles to be shot 200 miles into Russia. I think that was a bad thing. And that brought the Koreans in, North Korea, another man I get along with very well. I'm the only one that does. But that did a lot of bad things. I don't think that should have been allowed. Not when there's a possibility, and certainly not just weeks before I take over. Why would they do that without asking me what I thought? I wouldn't have had them do that. I think that was a big mistake they made.
You see, that was Trump, by the way, just a little while ago, when he was criticizing Biden for authorizing long-range strikes deep into Russian territory, and now he does the same. So you tell me what the hell is going on there in the White House in Washington. I think as I said many times, I'm quite sure Trump is compromised. He should be removed from a position of president because he's being controlled by whomever, but definitely not by U.S. Interests, actual U.S. interests, U.S. public, U.S. citizens. He's serving definitely not America, by the way, and he is endangering American people and the U.S. itself big time. He's freaking liar, by the way. I mean, you share your take, dear friends, what you think. Just recently, he was criticizing Biden for authorizing long-range strikes against Russia, and now he's doing the same. And he is transferring Tomahawk missiles, by the way. Biden refused to do it. Even Biden refused to do it because it's extremely dangerous. Tomahawk is nuclear-capable missiles, right? As Taurus is. German-made Taurus cruise missiles are, right? And that's why Moscow's position is very tough on that issue. You deploy those weapon systems, then we will retaliate. That's Moscow's take on the matter. So anyways, by the way, at this point, as I said, man, there is not really much need to discuss neither Trump administration or other so-called elites in the West, and then narratives. They are all the same. By the way. Globalists and neocons are in charge, and until Russia will force them to capitulate, they're not going to stop. They're going to continue escalating, and at some point they're going to get smashed. That's what is going to happen, by the way. Unfortunately, due to this escalatory ladder, some serious harm is going to be done to many countries, and they're going to be collateral damage too. We all understand this, isn't it? There's going to be some very serious collateral damage, but yet again, we did not start this, but we will finish it. That's how it is, man. That's how it is. And before I continue, I said, there is some news left. Let me highlight, dear friends, that this project is an independent project, by the way, from Russia. Only exists as long as I have your support, community support. And if you like my work, if you want to help me maintain this project, please consider to support. You can do it through several means. You can donate to this channel through PayPal or Boosty platforms. You can subscribe on my Patreon page. And when it comes to Patreon and the Boosty pages of mine, first news updates are published there initially from Monday to Thursday. Maybe I will do it from Monday to Friday from this week. And then after several hours, these first news updates are published on YouTube and Rumble too. So therefore, you will, while subscribing to my Patreon or Boosty page, you will also have early access to those updates, which might be handy in some sense. So and there is also, of course, other content that I will have on Patreon that you will have access to. So that's, I try my best to have content on Patreon, exclusive content on Patreon and Boosty as my thank for support of the community members. Links to Patreon, Boosty, and PayPal are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And during the live streams, you can use, of course, super chat feature. And on Rumble, And also you can become premium subscriber there on Rumble. And when it comes to Rumble, Viper, member of our Rumble community, suggested today that maybe I should publish members only, my updates, not just initially, not just on Patreon and Boosty, but also on Rumble for premium subscribers. And I don't know how to do it technically yet, but I will try to do it tomorrow. So I thank you for suggestion, Viper. I'll try to do it tomorrow. So premium subscribers on Rumble will also have early access to those first updates if I figure it out how to do that stuff, because I have not done it before. Okay, dear friends, that's been said. Let me continue with some other news now. And what is the next? Well, we have a statement of former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev about war with Europe. Nowadays, Western so-called elites love to talk about war with Russia. It's a daily occurrence. Different capitals from the West on regular basis are threatening their own public about inevitability of the war with Russia and that kind of stuff. And Medvedev decided to comment on that. Let me read his statements here, dear friends. So this is quotes. In European countries, they are talking everywhere about the war with Russia within the next 5 years. It should not happen. Why? Because it contradicts their interests of our country. First, Russia does not need a war with anyone in principle, including with the frigid old Europe. There is nothing to gain there. Europe's economy is weaker and they're dependent on the US. And its culture is ingloriously degrading. Europe is losing its identity. It's been dissolved by aggressive migrants. Second point, the main task of the Russian people is the development of their territories, including the territories of our returned lands. That is their difficult and their costly matter. Third point, Russia has always come to Europe only as a liberator, not as a conqueror. Why can't such a war be started by Europe itself? Medvedev is asking, and he is giving an answer. Here is why. First point, European countries are vulnerable and divided. They can only pursue their own interests, trying to survive in their current economic chaos. They simply cannot afford a war with Russia. Second point, European leaders are insignificant degenerates. Yeah, Medvedev is not shying away from stronger words. So European leaders are insignificant degenerates, incapable of taking on the burden of responsibility for any serious matter. They lack strategic thinking, let alone their passionality necessary for successful military decisions. And third point, Europeans are mostly inert and pampered. They do not want to fight for any common ideas or even for their own land. Why is war still possible? Medvedev is asking them. The probability of a total accident always exists, and the factor of hyperactivity of the frozen idiots has not gone anywhere, and such a conflict has an absolutely real risk of escalating into a war using weapons of mass destruction. Therefore, we must be on guard, Medvedev said. And yet again, you might have your take on Medvedev. Is he talking on his own behalf only, or maybe through Medvedev, Russian president, is making some statements too? I don't really have strong opinion on that. Sometimes Medvedev is clearly trolling Western counterparts of his, and in that case, probably he's just sharing his personal takes. Sometimes he's very serious. He's deadly serious quite often, and when that is the case, maybe those positions that he is highlighting are discussed between Medvedev and Putin, and maybe they share those takes. We just never know, right? We just never know. But I think you can agree on some points that Medvedev is making here, or disagree. But he he is on something there for sure. And he is absolutely correct when says that we don't want no war with nobody, right? He's also correct when says that Europe on its own, or European elites on their own, without US is not really force, they cannot wage war against Russia. We will freaking eat them alive, right? With US, if US is engaged, then that's an extinction level event then, and we all die. That's how it is, right? And even though Medvedev himself is a sort of a skeptical that all-out war will happen between Russia and Europe, nevertheless, he is also pointing out that because of the psychopaths in the leadership of globalist control regimes in Europe and the globalists themselves, escalation is very much possible, and that escalation, if it comes to it, very quickly might transform into nuclear war, which will not gonna end well for nobody. So I think it worth our attention, Medvedev's statements. Anyways, dear friends, let me continue with some other news. And TASS news agency is exactly reporting about article in the Politico on the matter that Medvedev highlighted there, that Europe may end up in war with Russia. According to Politico, some European officials are reluctant to confront Russia following their incidents involving unidentified aerial objects, fearing a potential military conflict on their continent. Politico notes that the current deterioration in relationships between Brussels and Moscow could lead to a Franz Ferdinand moment. And this is, of course, how should I say it? This is a point of when First World War began, basically, the assassination of the heir of the Austro-Hungarian throne in Sarajevo, which effectively marked the beginning of the World War I, reference to that moment, this Franz Ferdinand moment. Furthermore, their publication emphasizes that responding to threats allegedly emanating from Russia is quite difficult within their community, as member countries often have competing priorities. And we all know, dear friends, that for how long now? For about months now, every day, globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe, their so-called media is pushing all sorts of narratives about Russian drones here and Russian planes there. It's all false flag operations, obviously, and their preparation of the ground by globalists and first of all, their leading regimes, that is UK, France, Germany, to prepare ground for a launch of next phase of escalation. And if London, Paris, and Berlin are on the same page, some other countries in Europe, some other so-called elites there seems like are a bit more cautious because they don't want to get smashed, right, as a result of Russian retaliation, and they will, right? I said, by the way, we can eat Europe alive, literally, right? Europe has no freaking chances against us. Even though France and the UK has nuclear weapons, we can obliterate Europe anyways. Literally obliterate Europe, all of it, right? If it comes to full-scale, all-out war, and former Russian president said that all, isn't it? That if West will go ahead with escalation, that escalation may quickly turn into a nuclear exchange. And that's why I'm saying constantly that if there was a time for Europeans to wake up, that time was yesterday and day before yesterday, right? Tomorrow, it might be just too freaking late. So, yes, I can understand that some European states might have tried to get engaged in escalation with Russia because they don't want to be crushed as a result, right? But there are others. There are yet again London, Paris, and Berlin, British, German, and British so-called elites that are bloodthirsty and absolutely determined to go all the way, by the way, because they know if they are losing this proxy war against Russia, they are finished. Globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe, the so-called European elites, know perfectly well that if they are losing this proxy war against Russia, and they are losing it, by the way, and they have no freaking chances to achieve any success. So they know if they acknowledge that they are losing, then they are finished, right? On geopolitical scale, no one will have any respect for them ever again, right? Because they're going to be just nothing, nobodies. This is inevitable process anyways, right? And therefore, globalists and globalist control regimes are, first of all, aristocracies, by the way, European aristocracies that were ruling this world almost entirely for the last 300 to 500 years. I mean, they are so freaking desperate, isn't it? Especially British aristocracy, by the way, especially British aristocracy, man. They were running the world for how long, and now they are realizing that once whole world will realize that they have lost this proxy war against Russia, they are finished, literally, right? Give it to 20, 30 years, by the way, and continental Europe and UK going to become, as I said many times, either loosely relevant or completely irrelevant part of the Eurasian continent, right? And they're afraid of that, those globalists, right, and globalist control regimes. And they will go ahead with next phase of escalation, no doubts about that. They will go ahead because seems like, they are cornered, kind of. They cornered themselves, When you corner a rat, that rat will act crazy. And Western elites are those rats, by the way, that being cornered by themselves. It's not Russia that initiated this fight, isn't it? It's globalists that initiated this fight against Russia, initiated this proxy war against Russia in the hope that they will conduct regime change, they will divide Russia, and they will capture all the Russian riches, right? And they will have resources for further growth and domination in this world. But they lost. They lost, right? They cornered themselves, and they are acting crazy now, as rats do when being in a corner, right? So unfortunately, they're going to go ahead with their next phase of escalation, and I really hope this escalation will not go nuclear, man. Holy shit, can you imagine, dear friends, level of devastation if this next phase of escalation that West gonna provoke anyways, they're gonna launch it, right? It's only a matter of maybe days, maybe weeks, but they're gonna launch that next phase of escalation. Can you imagine level of disaster if that escalation will trigger nuclear exchange, man? It's terrifying. It's terrifying, and I'm gonna be real, dear friends. I'm discussing. I was just like literally hour, 2 hours ago, I was discussing to buy freaking Sochi Geiger, man, which is a device, dosimeter, basically, device that counts levels of radiation. Because you never know, we are living in such crazy times that you might actually need such a device at one point. Let's hope not, but I mean, after all, former Russian President Medvedev would not touch up on a subject of possible nuclear escalation without knowing something, right? And he has access, by the way, to classified information that we will never know. So some very dangerous stuff there, very dangerous stuff. And when it comes to globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe, that some of them hope for next phase of escalation and preparing. Some are, trying to avoid their involvement. Well, there is a poll on tour among extremely hostiles, Polish elites, let me say. I don't know mindset of Polish people, Polish public. They are not necessarily known to be friendly towards Russia, but I'm not sure Polish people want a full-scale, full-out war with Russia. I really don't think so. But Polish elites are a bit different. Polish elites historically were always proxies. For the last couple of centuries at least, were proxies of the London in Eastern Europe. This is the case today too. And therefore, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk went to say publicly, by the way, that this war in Ukraine is our war too. He is telling this to Polish people that this conflict in Ukraine, in this former Soviet Republic, is a Polish war, right? Usually they are hiding their involvement in this proxy war against Russia, but Tusk did not feel that way today. Seems like, I don't know, this statement was today or yesterday, but anyways, he went to say, if we lose this war, their consequences will affect not only our generation, but also future generations in Poland, across Europe, in the US, and around the world, he said. And I don't know about US, by the way. America still has a chance to pull out of this conflict and stay out of it, right? I don't know if America First forces there will encourage J.D. Vance, will lecture J.D. Vance to act adequately, first of all, and then to remove through legal means Trump and put J.D. Vance in his position. In that case, U.S. might get out of this proxy war, then agree on significant concessions before Russia. And so Moscow will not seek a retaliation against U.S., at least on the state level, right? And then, after some time, eventually relationships between US and Russia might even normalize, right? So yes, is a different story. But when it comes to Europe, Polish elite, Polish prime minister is saying, demonstrating here fear of the globalists and the globalist control so-called elites in Europe, isn't it? He has a point when he's saying that if they lose, and that's the words that he used, if we lose this war, the consequences will affect not only our generation, but also future generations in Poland and across the Europe, which is true, by the way, which is true because they're going to lose it. They already lost this proxy war against Russia, right? And there are consequences of their hostility, of the crimes that European states, including Poland, committed against Russia will be felt by not just current generations in Europe, but future generations too, because as I said, there is no way, either in 10 years' time, if this conflict will end right now, today, there is no way Moscow will rebuild relationships with Europe again, right? Moscow will still be on a distance from the euro because European elites cannot be trusted. It's just too obvious, right? And without Russia, Europe is doomed, by the way. Without Russia, Europe has no future. That's how it is. Let's be real here. Neither Poland, neither Germany, neither France, neither UK, neither any other country, France, Italy, none of them have any future in this world without resources, right? And who could provide them with the resources and the power, actual power, by the way, military included? It was Russia. And the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, was very much open to the idea of alliance with Europe. You remember, dear friends, some 15, 18 years ago, it was a Russian president was talking about united economical space from Lisbon to Vladivostok. Moscow was very much open for cooperation with Europe, but European elites destroyed every chances of that. And not just destroyed the chances of cooperation, but went on a proxy against Russia that killed tens of thousands of Russian citizens. So Tusk has a point there. Donald Tusk, Prime Minister of Poland. Consequences of the crimes that European states committed against Russia will be felt by not just current generations in Europe, but next generations too, because give it to 20, 30 years and continental Europe plus UK, Iceland, and so on, by the way. Europe, being part of the Eurasian continent, is going to become, in best case of scenario, loosely relevant part of this world. In worst case of scenario, completely irrelevant. And that means Europe going to end up in a very, very dark place. It's already on the border with that dark place, right? Hopefully, my English is good enough and I did share my take on the situation. I am 100% convinced, by the way, that my reading of the big picture is correct. Some of us, hopefully all of us, but most definitely some of us will be around in 20, 30 years. And maybe we will remember what I was saying about future of the Europe some 30 years ago. RT, meanwhile, is reporting that even though Stammer, this puppet of the globalists and prime minister of UK, is very much leading the charge against Russia and endangering lives of its own fellow citizens, his rating, by the way, is as lowest as it can probably get. He hits a record low in UK's opinion polls. Only 30% of Brits, by the way, approve of their prime minister's performance. 13%. That's basically his freaking family members and their relatives, right? And party members. Probably not even his family members are supporting him, right? 13%, man. And this criminal, Stammer, is pushing for a war with Russia. People of UK, please wake up, man. Don't allow this creature that don't really represent you to trigger war with Russia, because we don't see you as enemies, man. Medvedev was 100% correct when he said that we are seeking no war with nobody. We don't freaking need no war, man. We have so much stuff to do here, right? In Russia. We are focused on Russia. And while saying so, I'm quite sure vast majority of public here in Russia is on the same page with me, absolutely. We don't seek no war with nobody, man. So please, people in Europe, man, in UK, in other European countries, wake up and stop your freaking crazy elites, man. Don't let them provoke next phase of escalation, because it's not gonna be freaking pretty. It's gonna be ugly, man, very ugly and devastating. And we don't want that. Maybe Russian leadership should be a little more nuanced and specific on no matter what might happen if it comes to actual, large-scale escalation between Europe and Russia, because I'm not sure European public understands dangers. I really don't think they know how dangerous the current situation is, man. Of course, informed minority understands. Of course, and the informed minority, some of the representatives of this informed minority are members of our community body, right? But unfortunately, they are not in a position to influence their, at least big time situation in their countries. We need majority of public to wake up. And how to achieve this, man? I have no freaking idea. So UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's popularity has hit the record low, with nearly 80% of Britons disapproving of his performance, according to an Ipsos poll published on Sunday. Starmer's rating has been battered following dissatisfaction with his handling of migration, a surge in arrests related to comments made online, the cost of living crisis, and the resurgence of the Pakistani rape gang scandal. Only 13% of Britons are satisfied with the UK Prime Minister's performance, while 79% are dissatisfied, Ipsos said, according to a survey in which 1,157 Brit adults were asked their opinions. Starmer's approval held slipped 6% since June, while disapproval rose by the same margin. So that's the UK, by the way. That's the UK. This extremely unpopular element is pushing UK towards their direct war with Russia, open war with Russia, by the way, which is insane, absolutely insane. And I don't know, man. I really feel sorry for I really feel sorry that there is no much we can do really to stop this process, man. Because no matter how much I want British public to wake up, they're not gonna. They're not gonna wake up, man. They're not. And time is running out, man. Time is running out, and it's not just UK, by the way. We all know that Macron is not any more popular than Stammer is. Right? French President Macron is also extremely unpopular, and he is pushing France towards the direct open war with Russia, and also Germany, by the way. 2/3 of German people are dissatisfied with their Chancellor Merz. Also, poll numbers, right? German Chancellor Friedrich Merz approval rating has hit its lowest point and continues to slide, according to a new poll released last Saturday. Nearly 2 out of 3 Germans are now dissatisfied with their chancellor, up to 20 points from 45 in early June, according to INSA survey. Meanwhile, their proportion expressing satisfaction with their chancellor has fallen from 36% to just 23%. 23%, by the way. You know, these extremely unpopular regimes in Germany, in France, in UK are pushing their countries towards open war with Russia, which is going to be devastating for these countries, man. And I don't know what can be done, right, to stop this process, man. I definitely cannot do much because I'm not citizen of any of these countries, but people should wake up in France, in UK, in Germany, man. Do something about it until missiles start flying, man. And they're gonna start flying if these psychopaths are not stopped. Let's continue, dear friends, with some other news. So Middle East. In today's first update, I did share this information that Benjamin Netanyahu will meet with the Yesha Council to discuss possibility of annexing the West Bank ahead of their upcoming meeting with Donald Trump. I guess such a meeting already take place because Netanyahu has met with Trump just a couple of hours ago. You can see a screenshot of that meeting right now on your screen. And earlier, before that meeting took place, Axios was reporting that Trump was planning to tell Netanyahu to accept the Gaza peace plan or face a public rift with Washington. Aides allegedly warned Bibi Netanyahu he'll be blamed for prolonged war, starvation, and blocking hostages release if he refuses. And just a little earlier than I start this live stream, media began reporting that the White House has released some 20-point plan for a settlement in Gaza. Let me give you some details on that, dear friends. So, U.S. administration is proposing to transfer the Gaza Strip to external administration for a transitional period. This is stated in the White House plan for resolving the conflict in their enclave. Gaza will be governed by their temporary transitional government consisting of technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee responsible for ensuring their day-to-day functioning of the public services and municipalities for the residents of Gaza, the document states. This committee will be composed of qualified Palestinian and international experts under their supervision and control of a new international transitional body, their peace councils. That's going to be the name of it, according to this plan, which will be chaired by the US President Donald Trump with their other members and their heads of the states to be announced later. The White House distributed peace plan states to the states. The document also notes that former British Prime Minister Tony Blair will also be member of this body. And earlier, dear friends, in previous updates, I did share with you reports according to which Tony Blair was considered to be one of the figures that's going to be in charge of Palestine or Gaza Strip, which is crazy, dear friends. Tony Blair is, of course, mass murderer and a genocidal maniac. Tony Blair was the criminal that was prime minister at the time of attack on Iraq, and over 1 million people have died as a result of this combined U.S., British, NATO attack on Iraq, right? Over 1 million people have been killed. And this genocidal maniac, Tony Blair, gonna be put in charge of Gaza Strip, where genocide is being committed by Israel right now. This is insane, right? This is insult to intellect of the world. I mean, intellect of the humanity. To propose something this disgraceful, right? But we are talking about initiatives from White House, by the way. And who are there in the White House? Donald Trump, right? So what do you expect, man? When you have a figure like that in the White House, then we should not expect any dignity or decency from the Washington, obviously, right? Nothing to be said about the rest of the political class, either in US or in other Western countries, by the way. And I can give you some other key points that are part of this 20-point plan of a White House. So Israel will not annex or occupy the Gaza Strip. Gaza will be declared a terror-free zone. All hostages living or deceased must be released within 72 hours after Israel accepts the deal. In return, Israel will free 250 prisoners serving life sentences and 1,700 detainees arrested after October 7. Hamas fighters will be granted safe passage out of Gaza. US will act as a mediator between Gaza and Tel Aviv going forward. The Palestinian Authority will undergo reform, after which administrative control of Gaza will be transferred to the Palestinians. Israel will maintain a limited security presence along the border, but will not reoccupy the Strip. This is all deception, by the way. We all understand this, isn't it? This is all deception. Trump already was engaged in deception operation against Iran personally on behalf of Israel when US was formally engaged in negotiations about her nuclear program with Iran, and Trump is doing the same. He is engaged personally again in a deception operation. There is a high pressure, really tough pressure on the Israeli regime inside Israel from families of their hostages and people that are supporting those families, right? They are conducting some demonstrations literally on a daily basis, every other day for sure, right? And to ease the pressure on Netanyahu's regime, they come up, I guess, with this deception operation. They will promise whatever to people in the Gaza Strip, to Hamas, and once the hostages are released, once all hostages are released by Hamas, Israel will go ahead with their final stage of genocide in Gaza, and Israeli fascists will try to kill as many Palestinians as they possibly can, and whoever will survive will be forced out of their Gaza. That's what is going to happen, brother. No one should take seriously this 20-point plan from White House, because this is not a peace plan. This is a deception plan. My personal opinion, by the way. I mean, if anybody has still, despite all the record of Trump and his administration and all the record of US political class in general, or Western political class in general, if anybody will still trust them, then you know what? I don't know. I have no words to say, man, in that case. They cannot be trusted ever, by the way. Ever. At least until societies in the West will reclaim their own countries and neutralize these corrupt so-called elites and let actually decent human beings to lead those countries. Meanwhile, we have this report that President of Iran, France, Pezeshkian, was interviewed by one of the U.S. Media outlets, and he once again stated that, and this is quote, "We will never seek nuclear weapons. Unfounded accusations are unacceptable," he said, and it was a Fox News that he told about it. And you know what? He might be correct. He might be correct. Maybe despite the recent Israeli-U.S. attacks on Iran, Iranian leadership still not considering to build nuclear weapons. And you know why? This might be the case because of this report that allegedly a senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader stated that Tehran should consider joining the new Saudi-Pakistani defense agreement, proposing Iran, Iraq, and others form a collective security bloc too. And if true, by the way, if Iran, I spoke about this topic in today's first update, but this is big deal, and I think worth our attention. If Iran will gain nuclear umbrella, as Saudi Arabia did from Pakistan, then in that case, why would they build nuclear weapons? Yet again, if Pakistan offers Iran such an agreement as they did with Saudi Arabia about mutual defense agreement alliance, that will mean that Pakistan is basically mostly free of U.S. influence, right? And allies big time on Chinese support, Chinese assistance. And when it comes to China, by the way, if we can say anything about Chinese interests in the Middle East, this interest is, first of all, stability there. Because I said many times before, globalists, neocons, Zionists, they are seeking for their own interests, for their own reasons that might be different, but they are on the same page when it comes to provoking a regional war in the Middle East, right? Globalists and neocons are seeking regional war to cut off navigation, shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf, and cut off China and the global South in general from Middle Eastern energy sources, to harm basically rapid development economies of the global South, and somehow stop rapid advancements of their economies there, including in China, right? And therefore, China will seek exactly the opposite, right? If China wants anything in regards to Middle East, is a stability. Stability. No wars, by the way. And Russia is on the same page. Russia don't want to see no regional wars in the Middle East. I think India is on the same page, right? They don't want to see no freaking regional war in the Middle East. And therefore, if this topic is already being discussed, and probably it was discussed between Tehran and Islamabad, otherwise I don't think a senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader will even say anything about it. If this topic is discussed and Islamabad and Tehran will sign up for such an agreement on a mutual defense, which will give Iran nuclear umbrella from Pakistan, that will mean that first of all, globalists, neocons, and Zionists gonna struggle to provoke regional war, and that will also mean that Pakistan, maybe surprisingly for some, but actually is more free from U.S. influence than many were expecting. And China maybe actually won struggle with the U.S. over their influence in Islamabad. And by the way, Chinese defense minister just a couple of days ago, I believe, had an interview with one of their US or British hosts from alternative media, by the way. And he said, he was asked directly which side Pakistan is allying itself with China and or US. And Pakistan's defense minister was trying to say, you know what, we're doing good with US and so on. But nevertheless, I mean, he still said that, I mean, China is a neighbor, so Pakistan is seeking closer ties with China. So this is big deal, man. This is big deal. And well, globalists, because of these developments that are happening right now, these days, by the way, just a couple of days ago, Islamabad and Riyadh announced their mutual military agreement, the defense pact. Now Iran is saying that, you know, they will consider to join this pact if possible. Well, this will force, of course, globalists, neocons, and the Zionists to accelerate their destructive plans in regards to region. And so I guess there is a high risk that Israel and US might attack Iran in very short time, before Iran has agreement with Pakistan. This might happen, by the way. This might happen. Anyways, let's continue to observe the developments there. But you know, something very serious is happening in the Middle East, and these developments have not been discussed in either MSM, by the way, widely, or even in alternative media. I don't know why. I did pay attention to these developments, and you know about it, friends. I talked about Pakistani-Saudi agreement. I'm talking about potential Iran-Pakistan agreement, which will give them two nuclear umbrella. This is serious stuff that is happening. And also, dear friends, when it comes to Iran, there was reports today on number of Telegram channels on Russian or pro-Russian segment of this platform that on September 27, 2 days ago, AN 124, basically, Russian heavy transport aircraft of the Russian Aerospace Forces flew from Irkutsk to Tehran. And cargo is unknown, but Irkutsk hosts Irkut Aviation Plant, which manufactures, among other things, Su-30 fighters of various variations, and also Yak-130 combat trainers. Yet again, who knows what else? Who knows what else? And you know, one might argue that some advanced fighter jets have been transferred to Iran from Russia, maybe some other military equipment. It's also a possibility, which is good, by the way, which is good. Just a couple of days ago, dear friends, a number of sources on internet, in Russian segment of internet, were reporting that MiG-29s, modernized MiG-29s, were spotted in Iran, even over the Tehran at one point, which is interesting. Maybe Iranian Air Force is getting some significant assistance, by the way, right, from Russian side, and I think China is providing with all sorts of weapons too. I'm quite sure about it. And dear friends, right now, Viper, a member of our community on Rumble, gifted her two premium subscriptions to my Rumble channel, to members of our community. Thank you very much, Viper, for your support and assistance. Thank you very much. And I will highlight this in after news segment, of course. And dear friends, let me just remind you that you know, you can use Super Chat while I'm online. You can use Super Chat to donate to the channel, or PayPal or Boosty platforms. And so, yes, interesting news, isn't it? Interesting news that 2 days ago, Russian AN-124, biggest plane in service right now in the world, by the way, has transferred something from Russia to Tehran. I guess some advanced military equipment. And when it comes to military capabilities, military equipment, we also have this report from Wall Street Journal that Pentagon pushes to double production of 12 critical missiles bracing for a potential conflict with China. Fearing low weapon stocks, U.S. called on missile suppliers to increase production of Patriot interceptors, SM-6 missiles, LRASM missiles, JASSM missiles, PRSM missiles, and some other missile systems that are adopted by Pentagon. And well, maybe too little too late to wake up for American militaries, by the way. How many HIMARS missiles they transferred to this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky? How many ATACMS missiles they transferred to Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky? A lot, right? Probably most from their stockpiles. How many Patriot missiles they transferred to Israel and the Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky? Probably most of their missiles that they had in the stockpiles, right? And I'm quite sure same can be said about many other type of weapon systems that are adopted by U.S. militaries. And well, not surprisingly, some people, at least in Pentagon, are waking up and realizing that, you know what, our stocks are freaking empty and we have nothing there. And it will take years, by the way. It's easy to say, let's double or triple production. I mean, let's try. We will see how it will work. Insane, man, insane. But yet again, when leadership of Western countries are led by, are indoctrinated in some sick ideologies, of course, they are pushing the policies based on this sick ideology, not based on interests of their people of these countries, right? And US is no exception, man. Absolutely. And when it comes to, yet again, weapon systems, in US, there are statements that they're going to ramp up production of this and that, while in China, they are actually working on it, right? They are producing stuff, not just talking about it. Usually they don't even talk, right? Chinese don't talk much, by the way. They do, right? And just recently on internet, pictures did surface of one of the 6th gen, or let's say one of the modern planes. It could be 5th gen, it could be 6th gen, or no one knows because Chinese side is not commenting on the matters. But pictures did surface of a new generation of planes. You can see on your screen right now. This one is a J-36 with the 3 engines, by the way, quite unique configuration there for a plane. If this J-36 will enter the service, I think this will be only 3-engine plane in this world in service, right? You can see 2 intakes are under the fuselage, and 1 intake is on top of the fuselage, which is an interesting engineering decision, but with some flaws in it, I think, because just imagine a situation when pilots have to eject from the plane for whatever reason. It's not going to be easy, isn't it? It's not going to be easy because they have an intake right on top of the canopy there. I mean, almost right on top of the canopy. Anyways, interesting design, interesting plane there. And today, number of channels share the video of these planes maneuvering, taking test flights. And let me show you the difference. Those videos, I was a bit surprised to see this video. For its size, it's a massive plane. In my personal opinion, this could be either frontline bomber or maybe long-range interceptor. I did not think this plane could be fighter jet, but agility of the plane is quite surprising. I mean, look, speed and then angle of attack when plane turns, right? It's quite design. And there is also another video that I can show you. It's fast, relatively maneuverable plane. And I think it is once seeing these videos, by the way, I think I do have a point. Most likely these planes are either long-range interceptor or frontline bombers with stealth capabilities, with low observability technology incorporated within. So interesting stuff, isn't it? While Pentagon is talking about stuff, Chinese are actually doing it. And this is, dear friends, only one of their new generation planes or new type of planes that China is testing right now. And there are several, right? Nothing to be said about J-20 that is already in a service. And recently, according to some reports, 300 of their J-20s was built. They already have 300 J-20s in their service, which is quite impressive. US only built about 200 F-22s, for example, and then they stopped production. And who knows how many of these F-22s are now actually operational? Maybe half, maybe 100 max, right? China has operational J-20s, 300 of them, maybe more even. And also, just recently, I showed you a video from Chinese new generation aircraft carrier on which a J-35 was operating. Another fifth-gen fighter jet of China. So, well, advances of Chinese aerospace industries is impressive, man. I didn't expect this, right? Anyways, dear friends, let me share a few more news, and I think that's about it for today's news segment. Interesting news in regards to cooperation between Russia and Vietnam. Two countries might sign a deal this year on building Vietnam's first nuclear power plant. Duma is Russian parliament, by the way. So Energy Committee Chair of Russian Parliament, Shulginov, made a statement about it. Project would be led by Rosatom, world leader in nuclear exporter, and over 30 of its reactors are already under construction on contracted worldwide. By the way, Rosatom is clear leader. There is no one really close. World leader when it comes to building nuclear power plants all over the world. And maybe this year, agreement will be finalized between Moscow and Hanoi, right? It's a Hanoi, isn't it? Capital of Vietnam, man. Northern Vietnam capital was Hanoi, and the capital of Southern Vietnam was Saigon, isn't it? That was then transformed into Ho Chi Minh City. Anyways, hopefully agreement will be finalized and Russia will build their nuclear reactor in Vietnam. Of course, this will be beneficial for both countries. And I'm gonna end news update on wet dreams of German political elites. They are allocating some 80 billion on military purchases. At least that's what they're talking about, by the way, and I have shared information about it in my previous updates. And now we have this report that Germany will invest 35 billion euros in a space by 2030. Defense Minister of Germany, Pistorius, stated that Germany aims to create a sustainable space infrastructure consisting of satellite constellations, ground stations, secure launch vehicles and their services for recognition, communication, and defense. Therefore, Germany will acquire new satellite constellations for early warning, recognition, and their communication to protect itself from Russia and China. Of course, they have to mention Russia, by the way, and nowadays China too, right? Okay, this is where dreams, by the way. Germany is in no position to have any ambitions about space. Whole of the European countries together, by the way, barely capable of doing anything, literally anything. They are barely capable of making a couple of launches a year, maybe not even that. So Europe used to have some prospects before, some 20, 30 years ago, and their prospects on space development, space explorations too, could be very serious if they would choose to cooperate with Russia. But they went other ways. They chose hostility. And now when you hear that, well, Germany gonna do some stuff in space, and France gonna do some stuff in space, and UK gonna do, I mean, come on, man, you cannot launch freaking missile, man, rocket, right? You are heavily dependent on US for that, right? Some might say, well, French is still capable of launching rockets. Yes, I mean, how many rockets did they launch last year? 1, 2. That's it, right? So I don't consider French to be among space exploration countries, man. US, yes. Russia, of course. China, definitely. Even India is much more advanced nowadays, I think, Indian space program than a French space program, or European one for that matter, by the way. So it's just once again, this kind of information is demonstrates how out of touch with reality these psychopaths are, man, that globalists put in position of power all over the Europe, including in Germany. They have no money, by the way, to fund their social programs that they have in place, right? And they're gonna spend their 80 billion on military purchases, 35 billion on some space stuff. Come on, man. Who you are kidding, man? Freaking imbeciles, isn't it? And that's about it, dear friends, for today's news segment. I will join for a community chat for a little while now. Unfortunately, I was monitoring all during the news segment, and unfortunately on YouTube there was only like 60, 65, rarely 70 members of community online. Anyone time. I was hoping that maybe this week, second week, since I make these changes in the schedule, I was hoping that this week maybe more members of community will join these evening streams. Maybe 10 hour is really, really bad timing, 10 p.m. Moscow. Maybe really bad timing, and I have to change it or something. I don't know. What is your take on that, dear friends? And let me, before I join the community chat, dear friends, as I mentioned already, Viper gifted a premium subscription to 2 members of our community on Rumble. And thank you very much, Viper, for your support. I will highlight now this gift. So that's how it looks, by the way, when someone gives a premium subscription to other members. Thank you very much, Viper, for your support. 2 gifts to members of community of the premium subscription means basically $10 donation to this project. So thank you very much, Viper. And of course, we have now 2 more members among premium subscribers. And hopefully they will continue to be premium subscribers. So as I said earlier, tomorrow, while publishing first news update on Patreon and Boosty first, I will try to publish update on Rumble too for premium subscribers to have early access, and after 2-3 hours a video will be available for everybody, right? So thank you very much, Viper. That's being said, let's have a chat, dear friends, now for a little while. Thank you all once again for joining the stream. And let's see if there was any questions directed to me. There was no super chat on Rumble or donation through PayPal or Boosty to highlight. So Scooby is commenting, Russia should be approaching China for support to conquer Ukraine within the next year. Instead, they are slowly trying to win this war of attrition with limited support from them. Well, we don't need to conquer nothing really. All we need is to liberate historical Russian territories and the people, by the way. First of all, it's about people, right? It's about Russian speakers that are oppressed by this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. And yes, this is a slow process. Attrition campaign is always the slow campaign, but once attrition reaches its main task, which is to devastate military capabilities of their enemy, to devastate their enemy, not just militarily, but also psychologically, economically, financially, in every possible way. And when collapse begins among enemy formations, at that point, attrition phase of the campaign quickly transforms into large-scale advance, large-scale offensive, and I think we will see that. Eventually, we will see this. I'm not military expert, dear friends. I cannot tell you when this will happen in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, or 5 months' time, but eventually this will happen, for sure. And when it comes to China, of course, it would be nice if China, India, other allies of Russia stand with Russia more openly. They support Russia, by the way, don't get me wrong. Many countries worldwide support Russia, but they still are trying to play this game of neutrality, right? Which is quite frustrating, because the question is, I mean, how you are neutral in a conflict when Russia is basically fighting against evil force that Western elites are. I mean, how you can be neutral? How? This is a question of course, I can understand that Chinese leadership and Indian leadership and leadership of other countries, first of all, their policies are based on national interests as they see it. But I think it is in national interests of the countries that are seeking emergence of the multipolar world to stand on high moral principles, right? And so you tell me, dear friends, how it is moral for leadership of Russian allied countries to say that they are neutral in this fight in which Russia is fighting evil force, truly evil force, by the way, that globalists and neocons and Zionists are. I mean, how you can be neutral in this, man? I don't know. I don't know how you can be neutral in a fight when good is versus evil. I don't know, man. I have issue with that. Moscow did not ask, by the way, neither China, neither India, neither any other country from BRICS for direct military assistance. But, it would be nice. It would be nice from many standpoints, and from morality standpoint too, by the way, because this multipolar world has to stand on high moral principles, right? And I think it would be great if Beijing and New Delhi and Pretoria, by the way, in South Africa, and Brazil, right? Capital of Brazil, leadership of capitals of other countries that are actively working for Development of Multipolar World will say it openly, that in last 300 to 500 years, Western so-called elites were transformed into absolute evil force on this planet. And Russia is now fighting this evil force on behalf of all of humanity. And we have to stand with Russia. That's the statements, by the way, that I expect from my allies, right? And unfortunately, neither New Delhi, neither Beijing made such a statement, at least for now. Maybe tomorrow, maybe day after. But, you know, we will see, man. But I'm 100% convinced, dear friends, that Western so-called elites are existential threat for humanity. I'm 100% convinced in that. And dear friends, right now there was a donation, super chat on Rumble from Scooby, and let me highlight, dear friends. I was just reacting on a comment from Scooby, and there is also super chat. So let me, dear friends, highlight this super chat. Thank you very much, Scooby, for super chat on Rumble and $5 donation. And comment from Scooby is most unwilling conscripts in the Ukraine army are Russian-speaking people. Their attrition is happening upon Russian speakers. Unfortunately, many Russian speakers on Kyiv-controlled territory being sacrificed by forcefully, obviously, by Western elites and their proxy regime in Kiev. Many people from forcefully mobilized individuals that been sent to the front line are Russian speakers, by the way. They don't want to fight this war. They don't want to be in the trenches. And they've been sent, they've been thrown into trenches forcefully, right? This is tragedy. This is tragedy, by the way. This is civil war. I said many times, isn't it? That this is civil war that Western so-called elites were able to provoke inside the Russian world, right? And civil wars are always most tragic and devastating for any society. For any society, by the way. This civil war is no exception. And it's not just me. Russian president also on several occasions said they're basically saying that this conflict definitely has elements of civil war in it. And it's just true, right? So, yes, attrition campaign, unfortunately, has an impact on pro-Russian people too, on Kyiv-controlled territory. But, this is not the war that Russia chose. This is not a war of choice for Russia, right? This is a proxy war that West is waging against Russia since 2014, by the way. Many people, especially in the West, are forgetting that this conflict has started in 2014, when, despite the promises that was given to Yanukovych's government by European so-called leaders, he was overthrown in a bloody coup d'etat that was led by US, right? US secret services and their assets on the ground. Although Europe, of course, played significant role too. And so West provoked this proxy war against Russia in 2014. But, Western public figures, Western so-called media, of course, don't want to remember 2014, don't want to talk about it, right? But that's when this conflict actually started, this proxy war against Russia. And almost straight away, this neo-Nazi gang that was put in position of power by the West began terrorizing Russian speakers. Straight away, by the way. And eventually, Moscow just had no option but to start special military operation. Yet again, when this proxy war was started by the West, and we will finish it, and this conflict will end on Russian terms. There is a high risk that we will see, and globalists out of desperation will definitely, most likely will go ahead with next phase of escalation, and Russia will respond, and it's gonna get ugly very quickly. By the way, it's gonna be devastating, but hopefully it will not reach a nuclear exchange level, but something big will happen, and eventually globalists will be put in their place. Moscow just has no other options, by the way. I mean, we cannot retreat nowhere, right? We are in our country. So Russian people cannot go anywhere, cannot retreat. It's West that is attacking, right? So West was attacking for a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, since 2014. One might say since the collapse of Soviet Union, by the way, West was on assault against Russia, and that's true too, right? But if we are talking about this Ukrainian crisis, current situation, then West is on assault against Russia since 2014, right? And Russia did not retaliate. Soon Russia will. Just saying. Of course, I would prefer this conflict to end right now, immediately, right? But realistically speaking, until Western so-called elites are forced to face the reality, they're not gonna do it. Chris Cleland is commenting, what if are they talking about war with Europe when the US is the one behind everything? Without the US, Europe fails in line in time immediately. It's ridiculous. Well, there is a position that US runs their things, US political class, right? But there is also another opinion that globalists run the show. And when it comes to globalists, main stronghold of globalists is Europe, right? And who are the globalists? I mean, have seen like questions like that. Who are those globalists, right? And I'm telling you, my understanding, globalists are, by the way, aristocracies in Europe. Main driving force behind the globalist movement are aristocracies of Europe, aristocracies of former empires, right? That were robbing almost entire world for the last 300 to 500 years. Those aristocracies, they lost maybe empires or military grip on our countries worldwide, but what they did create instead is this financial system, right? That is used by whole world, almost whole world, by the way. Western financial and banking system. And who is in charge of this system, by the way? It's Western aristocracies, right? And the clans, financial clans that are affiliated with them. We don't have to go any further than, let's say, Rothschilds, that are creators basically of a modern banking system, right? So that's who are their globalists. Western aristocracies, European aristocracies, and their financial clans that are affiliated with them. And among these European aristocracies, of course, most powerful is British aristocracy, British royal family, right? They are most powerful force there. And that's why a number of media outlets, even in the West, by the way, are claiming that Trump's U-turn did happen after he was on his state visit in UK. He was in Lion's Den, right? There. And his people, of course, Trump was not alone. I mean, he was maybe enjoying himself, walking around stuff, but Trump's people, his administration, they've been told some stuff, I guess, there in UK. by some influential people, and it did not took long for Trump or administration there, once they go back to Washington, to make U-turn. So I would not agree. I cannot agree on a position that it's all about US. By the way, I think globalists were using US. Actually, it's other way around. It's globalists, by the way, that were using US, abusing US through their influence, and they have infiltrated US big time. By the way, you think who Democrats are, who Democrat establishment is in the US. And how come that U.S. intelligence community, for example, is deceptively operated on behalf of Democrats? Maybe because both being infiltrated by the globalists. Just saying, you know. And it's not just globalists that infiltrated and compromised the U.S. political class. Of course, Zionists, by the way, are even more powerful, right? So I don't think U.S. is pulling the strings. I think U.S. being used and abused, by the way. And more Americans are waking up to this truth, that their country being used as an enforcer by Zionists and the globalists and their neocon allies, right? All over the world for decades and decades, while completely neglecting interests of the American people. So that's my take. That's my take on the situation. U.S. political class is compromised, right? And the U.S. is run not just by forces that are, operating based on the interests of their U.S. citizens, but mainly by outside forces. First of all, Zionists and their globalists and their allies that they have inside the U.S. That is a democratic establishment, deep state, and intelligence community. That's my take. You might disagree with me, Chris. It's fine, of course, but that's my understanding. I don't think U.S. is all powerful. No, U.S. is a powerful country, but a tool in hands of certain groups, right? Let's not downgrade capabilities of globalists, by the way, and Europe. I mean, Europe did manage to occupy almost whole world, right, for the last 300 to 500 years. And let's not forget that U.S. itself is a creation of European aristocracies. It was a British colony, after all, right? Not just British colony. There was parts that were belonging to France, for example. I believe Spain was involved. Even Netherlands had some territories there, right? And Russia too, by the way. So let's not underestimate. We should never underestimate capabilities of their enemies, but we should never also downgrade capabilities of the enemy. And globalists are very serious enemies for all of humanity. Globalists and their allies. I see a question from Nidish Kumar, dear friends. Levan, an election are done now in Moldova. What will conspire there? Are they going to push Transnistrians out of their lands? I mean, if you mean Santos regime gonna start a war against Transnistria, they're not gonna do it alone. By the way, we should keep in mind that the so-called army of Moldova is a freaking joke, right? Literally, They have no army. That's why they lost to Transnistrians, right? In the first place. But even if they had some capabilities, by the way, there's no way Chinsau or Kishinev gonna go ahead with the war against Transnistrians without direct NATO assistance. And there are talks that from one side, NATO might attack Transnistria, from other side, Kiev regime, which theoretically, yes, might happen. But in that case, what will stop Russia to use long-range means against the countries that will be engaged in this assault against Transnistria? So I don't think they're going to dare to attack Transnistria. What I do think is that divisions inside their society in Moldova are going to further accelerate. We're going to see separatist movements emerging in Gagauzia region, big time, and some other parts of Moldova. Eventually, we might see civil unrest and some, maybe civil war even, right? And Moldova gonna undergo full-scale disintegration eventually, right? And in 10 to 15 years from now, they're gonna be no Moldova on the political map. Part of Moldova where population mostly considers themselves to be Romanians will join Romania, and other parts of Moldova that considers themselves not as Romanians, but as a Gagauz people, as Russians, as Moldavians, by the way, some do. They will go separate way. Maybe they will decide to, hold a referendum and join Russia. Maybe they will decide to stay independent. We don't know that, but Moldova itself is destined to full-scale disintegration. I don't see this quasi-state on the political map in 10, 15 years. It's just impossible. But when it comes to Transnistria, I don't think they're going to dare to attack Transnistria. I don't think so. They would do it already if it was that easy. But I guess Moscow has sent clear enough messages to all their capitals all over the Europe, including in Bucharest, by the way, that something might happen if they will dare to attack Transnistria. And I think this warning works, at least did work until now. Some comments are just very funny, by the way. It's always nice to see. I mean, that's a main point of this community chats, by the way, that active members of community have good opportunity to exchange opinions in real time, share some joke or some opinion or something. It's great. I love to see this, man. It's almost 2 hours, dear friends, this live stream. So let me scroll faster. Scooby is also commenting, is in China's interest to bog down the US in Iran if they are attacked? I don't think so. I think in China's in best interests of region and also in best interest of China and Russia is to avoid large-scale escalation in the Middle East, because if as a thought experiment, if we will just imagine that Western elites actually managed to provoke regional war there and shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf, what China gonna do in that case? They will have to increase their dependence on Russian energy supplies up to strategical levels, right? Up to critical levels, which is a danger, by the way, for both countries. We want, Russia and China to have a good economical ties, good trade, right? But we don't want some tremendous level of dependence on each other, because it's a vulnerability. And whenever there is some vulnerabilities, that creates tensions, right? And I think our plan of the globalists exactly is that, to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf, force China to increase its dependence on Russian energy up to a critical level. And then globalists' next stage or next step is to create tensions between Russia and China and basically provoke confrontation between the two, and this way get rid of two most difficult competitors or the enemies that globalists are facing. That's their game plan, by the way, right? So we cannot allow this to happen. Simple as that. Neither China, neither Russia. We just cannot allow this to happen, and that's why Moscow and Beijing should do anything and everything to make sure that globalists will fail. Globalists and their allies will fail in provoking regional war in the Middle East. So I don't think China wants US to get engaged in a war with Iran and then being bogged down there. No, because it will disrupt navigation in the Persian Gulf, right? We don't need that. We need a conflict to be avoided. Nidish Kumar is commenting that when I think they are stealth plane to control stealth unmanned fighter drones. Nidish is talking about this plane, J-36. Could be mothership sort of to control some operations of the other drones, right? While staying, behind their enemy lines, so to speak. Could be the case, but agility. You see the video, agility of that plane. You see the angles of attack when plane was turning. It did surprise me. Plane looks like to be faster and agile, which is may not be enough for a dogfighter, and this plane is clearly not a dogfighter. It's just too big for that, right? But it can be a long-range interceptor. It can carry like crazy number of interceptor missiles, right? Inside base. And also this plane can be frontline bomber, sort of a Chinese adaptation of Russian Su-34, in which pilots also sit side by side. Usually in planes, when there is two pilots, two crew members, it's a tandem. It's a tandem that is used, right? When pilots are not next to each other, side by side, but are on top of each other, right? One first and then second one. But in this plane, configuration is like in Russian Su-34, and that gives me sort of an indicator that maybe this plane will operate as a frontline bomber too, or strike plane, basically. It's a stealth. It definitely has stealth features, and if we take in account that recently there was reports that some Chinese J-20s flew in a zone of operation of either South Korea or Japan, by the way, and none of the Chinese J-20s, not squadron, but couple of J-20s flew, and none of them being detected, When I saw that report, it was also sort of surprising because I did not expect J20 to be that stealthy. So I guess China went quite far in stealth technology, and yes, J36, that plane, and all the other planes, by the way, that China is testing right now, all of them will have that stealth feature. For now and for next 10 or 15, 20 years, maybe this stealth feature will be useful. But in the long run, I don't think this is something that engineers should spend too much time, because it's already some reports are suggesting that Russia did master a miniaturization of long-wave radars. And for long-range radars, by the way, stealth planes are not at all difficult to detect, man. They see it as any other object in the sky. It's only short-wave radars, by the way, that usually are used on planes that are struggling with their stealth planes. But long-wave radars, they don't care. They can stealth, they can see any plane. Stealth, not stealth, doesn't matter. And if reports are correct, and Russian engineers managed to achieve miniaturization of the long-wave radars, and if tracking system, firing solutions are also in place, then I think Russian engineers were correct when they were more focused on not so much on the stealth technology itself, but on radio electronic warfare, for example, right? And on infrared detection and tracking and elimination, and also in the long-wave radar systems. I think Russian engineers were actually correct, and give it, I think, 10, 15, 20 years, and all the other countries will master all these technologies. And at that point, this extremely, extremely expensive stealth plane is going to be just visible as in very same way, or almost the same way as fourth generation fighter jets that cost like 2-3 times less, right? So, but for now, yes, stealth technology does, means something, right? But I think Russian approach is correct. Russian engineers are more focused on radar technology and the radio electronic warfare. There is two ways to avoid detection. One is to have a stealth configuration, and another is radio electronic warfare, so that you distract the enemy radars, right? So they are unable to see you or track you. They have no firing solution on you. Even if they will notice on a radar that there is something there, they cannot have firing solution if you have good enough jamming systems, right, in the place. And allegedly, according to reports that I have seen, Russian planes are quite good at jamming. I mean, it's up to pilots really and specialists in the field to say how accurate my assumptions are, but I think that's how it is. Nevertheless, by the way, Chinese aerospace industry made a tremendous jump, man. They were just like a minute ago was copying planes from Soviet Union and Russia, right? And then like that, they jumped to 5th and 6th generation planes. Wow, that's impressive, man. That's impressive. Dear friends, it's more than 2 hours now. Maybe I should end the stream right now. Thank you all, dear friends, for your time and attention. Many thanks to Scooby and Viper for donations. Many thanks to everybody who supported and continues to support my work and this project. Of course, have a wonderful day, dear friends, and see you tomorrow. Thank you, and take care.